The next morning, Kamsi woke up early and prepared herself for another day of searching for work. She tied her worn scarf around her head, picked up her old weeding tools, and stepped out of the small house. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the village. Kamsi felt a glimmer of hope as she walked down the dusty road, her tools clinging softly with each step. As she passed along a quiet street, she noticed a farm in the distance. The crops looked like they had been growing for a while, and Kamsi thought they might need weeding. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to check it out. She entered the farmland carefully, hoping to find a work that would allow her to earn some money for food. As she walked through the farm, examining the crops, she suddenly heard a loud voice behind her. "Hey, what are you doing in my father's farmland?" The voice shouted angrily. Kamsi turned around quickly and saw Eloka, the son of the man who owned the farm, glaring at her with a fierce eyes. His face was twisted in anger as he stormed toward her. "You cursed daughter of nobody," Eloka continued, his voice filled with bitterness. "What are you doing here? Have you started stealing things from people's farmland?" Kamsi's heart sank at his harsh words, but she tried to stay calm. She greeted him politely. "Good morning, brother Eloka." Eloka's face contorted with anger even more. "Brother, don't dare you call me that. Brother kill you there, you cursed child. Don't ever try that joke with me next time." Kamsi lowered her head, feeling ashamed but still determined. "I'm so sorry, brother Eloka. Please, I just wanted to ask for a favor. I was hoping you could talk to your father for me. I can weed the farm for you people, and I don't charge much, please." Eloka sneered at her, his eyes full of disdain. You want to bring your cursed body to our farm, so everything we planted will be a waste. No way. Go out. We don't need you." Kamsi felt her hope crumble, but she managed to hold back her tears. "I understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I am sorry for disturbing you." Without another word, Kamsi turned and left the farm, her heart heavy with disappointment. She continued her search for work, determined not to give up. After a while, she found another farmer who was willing to let her weed on his farm. The man seemed kind enough, and Kamsi worked hard all day, under the scorching sun, hoping to earn some money for her efforts. By the end of the day, Kamsi was exhausted, her hands cold from pulling out stubborn weeds. She approached the farmer, expecting to receive her payment. "Thank you for letting me work on your farmland today, sir," Kamsi said politely. "Can I please have my payment now?" The farmer looked at her with a frown. "Payment? You should be grateful that I even allow you to work for me. Do you think anyone else would give a cursed child like you a chance? You get nothing from me." Kamsi's heart broke at the man's harsh words, but this time she held back her tears. She knew crying wouldn't change anything. Without saying a word, she picked up her tools and walked back home with an empty hand. The evening sun was setting, casting long shadow on the ground as Kamsi trudged along the path to her lonely home. As she entered the small empty house, Kamsi sat on the floor, feeling the weight of the day on her shoulders. She was tired, hungry, and sad, but she refused to let herself cry. Instead, she closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for strength, hoping that tomorrow would bring a better day. A few weeks passed, and Kamsi had grown weary of the way people treated her. She would work tirelessly from morning till evening, hoping to earn something, only to be met with harsh words instead of payment. Each time, She returned home with an empty stomach and a heavy heart. But Kamsi was strong, and she decided to try something new. One morning, as she sat on the wooden stool in her room, an idea sparked in her mind. What if I plant my own crops? She thought aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. I could use the small piece of land near Papa's house. At least, then, I won't have to beg or be insulted. Without wasting any time, Kamsi took her small hoe and walked to her late father's land. The land was not much, just a little patch near the house. But to Kamsi, it was everything. It was a chance to survive on her own. Day after day, Kamsi worked hard, tilling the soil and planting seeds. She watered the land with care, speaking softly to the small plants as if they could hear her. Grow well, little crops, she would say. You are all I have now. As time passed, the crops began to sprout, their green leaves reaching toward the sky. Kamsi's heart filled with hope each day she saw them growing a little more. She was proud of what she was doing, even though it was a hard work. During this time, Osita was the only friend, the only one who showed her kindness. He would visit her often, bringing some food and amount of money, always with a smile. Kamsi, you are doing so well, he would say, encouraging her. Kamsi always used the money Osita gave her wisely, buying a food to keep her going. But one day, as she sat alone in her room, a troubling thought crossed her mind. What if Osita leaves me too? She wondered. What if he turns his back on me like everyone else? This fear gripped her heart. But instead of giving in to, Kamsi decided to work even harder on her little farm. I must be able to take care of myself, she told herself. No matter what happens, I must survive. Meanwhile, in the neighboring village, Uzonna, Amuche's husband, returned back after being away for work. As soon as he walked into the compound, he noticed something was wrong. Where is Kamsi? He asked, looking around. Amuche, who was busy in the kitchen, didn't seem bothered. She's gone back to where she belongs, she said with a huff. I don't want her to use her witchcraft to destroy my marriage. Since you have started siding her, I don't know what might happen next. Uzonna's face darkened with anger. Amuche, what have you done? He demanded. That poor girl has done nothing but suffer since she came to live with us. You didn't help her, you only added to her pain. Amuche crossed her arms, glaring at her husband. I have done my best for her, Uzonna, but I won't have her here, if it means risking my family. Uzonna shook his head sadly. You did nothing but cause that little girl sorrow, he said softly, but I pray that God will give us reasons to smile again. With those words, Uzonna walked away, leaving Amuche to her thoughts. He couldn't understand how his wife could be so cruel to a child who had lost everything. But deep down, he knew that Kamsi was stronger than anyone could imagine. And he hoped she would find happiness even if it wasn't with them. Back in her small farm, Kamsi continued to nurture her crops, her heart set on surviving, no matter what challenges that lay ahead. She had no idea what the future held, but one thing was certain, she would keep fighting, just like her father had taught her. And with each day, the crops grew taller, a symbol of Kamsi's determination and hope for a better tomorrow. Many years has passed, and Kamsi had grown into a young woman. But despite the passing of time, The pain and sorrow of her past still lingered in her heart. Every night, she lay on her bed. Her mind raced with thoughts of how to make her life better. She was determined to find a way to survive, to keep her mind from sinking into despair. With the little money she had saved, Kamsi decided to start a pure water hawking business. Water had no enemy, she thought to herself. People in this village will surely buy from me. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she had to try something to keep going. One hot afternoon, Kamsi walked through the village, balancing a bucket of pure water on her head. She called out, "Pure water! Buy your pure water here," hoping that someone would stop her to buy. As she made her way down the dusty path, she spotted Nwankwo, one of the elders in the village, sitting under a tree. Nwankwo waved at her, and she felt a spark of hope. Maybe he wants to buy pure water from me, she thought, smiling as she walked towards him. But as soon as she got closer, Nwankwo's smile turned into a sneer. "Ah, so the cursed child is selling cursed water too," he mocked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "And you think anyone in this village will buy that from you?" Kamsi's smile faded, and her heart sank. "But water has no enemy," she whispered, more to herself than to Nwankwo. Nwankwo laughed loudly, a cruel sound that echoed in Kamsi's ears. "Keep dreaming, girl. You are wasting your time and energy for nothing," he scoffed, waving her away. Tears welled up in Kamsi's eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't let Nwankwo's harsh words break her spirit. She turned and continued walking, calling out for buyers, even though her voice trembled. That evening, Kamsi sat on her bed, feeling defeated. She had sold very little and wondered if Nwankwo was right. Just then, she heard a knock on her door. Wiping her tears, she got up and opened it, to find Osita standing there with a kind smile on his face. "Osita, come in," she said, stepping aside to let him enter. Osita walked in and sat on the bed beside her. He noticed the sadness in her face and asked, "Kamsi, your face doesn't look bright today. Is everything alright?" "I'm fine, Osita," Kamsi replied, trying to sound cheerful. "I'm just tired, that's all." Osita reached into the bag he was carrying and brought out some food. "I brought this for you," he said, handing it to her. Kamsi was overwhelmed with gratitude. "Thank you, Osita. You always come to my aid whenever I'm in need." Osita smiled. "You are my friend, Kamsi. We are here to help each other." They continued talking for a while, but then Osita's tone changed. He leaned closer to her and said softly, "Kamsi, you have grown into a beautiful woman. Don't you think it's time to show how much we care for each other?" Kamsi's heart skipped a beat, but it's not a good way. She pulled back slightly, shaking her head. "Osita, I'm not interested. I have never done this before, and I don't want to. Not until I'm married." Osita frowned, but didn't give up. "Kamsi, I'm a full-grown man, and you are matured enough to handle this. It's not a big deal. Just make up your mind, okay? I have been here for you all these years, and now I need you." Kamsi felt a knot tighten in her chest. She cared for Osita, but she wanted everything to be done properly. "Osita, I do care for you, But I'm not ready for that. I want to wait until I'm married, she said firmly. Osita sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. Kamsi, you can help me just as I have helped you. But if you don't want to, I will have to find another girl who will love me with everything she has. Kamsi's eyes filled with tears, but she stood her ground. I'm sorry, Osita, but I can't. I won't do this unless it's done right. Osita stared at her for a long moment, then stood up. I understand, he said quietly, though there was a hint of disappointment in his voice. As Osita left, Kamsi sat down on her bed, tears finally spilling over. She didn't want to lose Osita, but she also knew she couldn't compromise what was important to her. As much as she cared for him, she needed to stay true to herself, no matter how much it hurt. And so, Kamsi lay down that night, her heart heavy with the weight of her choices, yet still clinging to hope that one day things will get better. As days went by, Kamsi didn't hear from his friend Osita. She began to worry, decided to check on him to make sure he was well. Osita had been her only friend for a long time, and the thought of losing him filled her with dread. With concern weighing heavily on her heart, Kamsi made her way to Osita's house. When she arrived, her heart sank. Osita was standing outside his house, holding a girl tightly in his arms. They were talking, facing each other and laughing, as if they share a special bond that Kamsi had never experienced. Her heart skipped a beat, and a wave of sadness washed over her. Without a word, she turned and hurried away, tears stinging her eyes. The only friend she had, the one person who had always been there for her, had found someone else. She felt lonelier than ever. With broken heart, Kamsi headed back to her parents' grave, the place where she always sought comfort in her darkest moments. She collapsed beside the graves and began to cry, her sob echoing in the quiet air. Why, Osita? Why did you leave me all alone? She whispered through her tears. As she cried, something caught her attention. Out of the corner of the eye, she noticed a small lifeless bird lying on the ground nearby. Her curiosity piqued. Kamsi wiped away her tears and slowly walked over to the bed. She knelt beside it and gently touched its cold body. Am I really cursed? She wondered aloud, her voice trembling with sadness. But then, something miraculous happened. The bird's tiny wings fluttered and it sprang back to life. Kamsi gasped in shock and jumped back. But the bird was dead. How did this happen? She thought, her mind racing in confusion. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined the whole thing. Still in shock, Kamsi slowly made her way back to the house, her mind filled with questions she couldn't answer. A few days later, Kamsi was returning home from the neighboring village, where she had gone to sell her pure water. As she walked down the street near her house, she saw a couple coming towards her. The woman was carrying a small child, who looks about 2 years old, in her arms. Kamsi recognized the woman immediately. She was one of the people who had treated her so harshly before. But now, the woman's face was wet with tears. Out of concern, Kamsi greeted them and asked, "Why are you crying?" The woman turned to Kamsi, her eyes filled with anger and sorrow. "Why are you asking? You cursed thing, as if there is anything you can do." She spat out bitterly. The husband, standing beside his wife, sighed deeply and explained to Kamsi, "Our baby, she's dead. We are just coming back from the hospital." Kamsi's heart ached for the grieving couple. She remembered the miracle with the bed and felt a strange urge to help. Without thinking, Kamsi put down her bucket of water and took a deep breath. Slowly, she walked closer to the woman. Her eyes filled with compassion. Tears streamed down Kamsi's face as she looked at the lifeless baby in the woman's arms. "Please God, let this work," she prayed silently. With trembling hands, Kamsi wiped away the tears in her eyes and reached out to touch the baby. She felt a warmth flow through her fingertips as she placed her hand gently on the child. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, the baby's eyes fluttered open and she let out a small soft cry. Kamsi gasped in surprise and shouted, "It worked! Thank you, Jesus." The couple stood there, stunned and unable to believe what they were seeing. The woman, who had once called Kamsi cursed, burst into tears of joy. "Thank you. Thank you so much. God have used you to bring joy to me and my husband. We are grateful." Kamsi could hardly believe what had just happened. For the first time in many years, the same people who had once called her cursed were now thanking her. She felt a warmth in her heart, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't cursed after all. 2 days later, as Kamsi was sweeping her compound, she noticed two familiar figures walking through the entrance. It was the husband and the wife, whose little girl Kamsi had brought back to life. They had come with smiles on their faces, their arms full of different kinds of foodstuffs: yam, rice, beans and more. Kamsi's heart filled with joy as they approached. "Kamsi," the woman began, her voice warm with gratitude, "we have come to thank you for what you did for us. You brought our daughter back to life, and for that we will forever be grateful." Kamsi smiled shyly, overwhelmed by their kindness. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm just happy that your daughter is alive and well." The man added, "You have a special gift from God, Kamsi. We wanted to show our appreciation by bringing you these gifts. Please accept them." Kamsi gratefully accepted the foodstuffs, her heart swelling with happiness. It was the first time in a long time that anyone had shown her such kindness. As the couple was about to leave, the woman hesitated, then turned back to Kamsi with a concerned look on her face. "Kamsi," she said, her voice filled with urgency, "as we were coming to see you, we saw a crowd gathered around a house. We heard that a young man who just returned from the United States was poisoned, and they say he's already dead. Please, could you come and help him and his family? They are desperate." Kamsi's heart sank. She didn't want to get involved. "I'm not sure I can help," she replied hesitantly. "What happened with your daughter was just a miracle. I don't want people to expect too much from me. What if it doesn't work?" The woman gently touched Kamsi's arm and pleaded, "Please, Kamsi, you have to try. The family is in so much pain. You are their only hope." After much convincing, Kamsi finally agreed. "Okay," she said quietly, "I will go with you." As they approached the house where the young man lay, Kamsi could feel the eyes of the villagers on her. Some whispered among themselves, and others stared at her with disbelief. She could hear some of them muttering, "What is that cursed girl doing here?" ignoring the hurtful words. Kamsi steeled herself and stepped closer to the lifeless body of the young man. She knelt beside him, her heart pounding in her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she remembered the miracle with the little girl. God, please, help me again, she prayed silently. Kamsi wiped her tears, then placed her hand gently on the young man's forehead. The crowd around her held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. For a few seconds, nothing changed. But then, suddenly, the young man gasped and opened his eyes. He was alive! The crowd erupted in shouts of joy and amazement. She did it! She brought him back to life, they exclaimed. But Kamsi didn't wait to hear their praises. Overwhelmed by what had just happened, she quickly got up and ran out of the compound. As she ran, she realized that what happened was not a coincidence. It was a gift from God, a gift that had changed her life forever. The once cursed child of the village was now blessed with the ability to bring the dead back to life. In the days that followed, word spread out through the village. People who had once looked down on Kamsi began to apologize. Osita, Chinenye, and Zoba, her old friends who had abandoned her, came to her with sorrowful faces. Kamsi, we are so sorry for everything. Please forgive us, they pleaded. Those who had made Kamsi work on their farmland without payment also came to her, bringing money and gifts as an apology. Kamsi, with a heart full of forgiveness, accepted their apologies and forgave each and every one of them. The young man who Kamsi had brought back to life also returned to show his gratitude. He and his family brought many goodies and a large sum of money. The young man, touched by Kamsi's kindness and humility, began to visit her often. Over time, he fell deeply in love with her. One day, he came to Kamsi with a proposal. Kamsi, you have a special place in my heart. I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? Kamsi, who had never expected such love and happiness to come her way, smiled and accepted his proposal. They got married soon in a joyful ceremony that brought the entire village together. After their wedding, the young man took Kamsi with him to the United States, where they started their new life together. And so, the once cursed child of the village became a beacon of hope and love, living happily ever after with her husband in a land far away. The story of Kamsi's gift and her journey from sorrow to joy would be told in the village for generations to come. The lesson from this story of Kamsi teaches us that no matter how difficult or painful our circumstances may seem, we should never lose hope. Sometimes, the very thing that makes us feel different or rejected are the gifts that can bring light and healing to others. Kamsi's journey shows us the power of forgiveness, kindness, and faith, reminding us that even in the darkest times, there is always the possibility of transformation and a brighter future. It's important to believe in yourself and in the potential for good, even when others doubt you. Thank you for watching this amazing story. Please kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. See you on the next video.